wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is tears and tantrums at or during a lesson or activity, which sounds like a very dry topic for us. So we're going to do our best to sauce it up, right, Bridget?
Yeah, sure. Let's do this.
Before we do that, I'd love to remind you to jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au and drop in your email address to join our tribe, and we will send you an email once a week to keep you up to date with everything that's in the world, and you can pick and choose where to dive deeper, and occasionally we'll send you something a little more intimate. So nourishingthemother.com.au. Now, Bridget, I brought this topic to the table because it seems to be, in particular, swimming lessons that we've had quite a number of emails about. You know, my child at swimming lessons is just a puddle of tears or screaming or won't get in the water, or I get in the water and she's clinging to me and I don't know what to do. You know, we have these conversations in our members group and I'd said to you, there's really something here, and you've had struggles with swimming lessons over the time. I've had struggles with swimming lessons over the time. And I just thought it's worth, if this is like a common pain point for mums out there, that it's worth probably just kind of not skirting but diving over this topic. Can I say that? Yeah. So there was this response that you had written in one of our members' discussions about this that I thought was absolute gold and had some beautiful points to maybe expand upon, and I was hoping that's what we could do today.
Do we want to read that or do we want to hash it out?
Well, I think it's a lot to take in with that context. So I was thinking about doing it point by point. What do you think?
Let's give that a whirl.
Point number one. When she refuses to participate, what's the feeling that comes up in your body? Why do you think that's important?
Because the nature of our nervous systems is such that whoever we're around, they are setting us up to feel what they feel. So even before someone opens their mouth to us, if we're in their vicinity and we're in their space, our nervous systems are talking to each other. So we're in the soup of feelings with them. So if we're feeling something rising up in us when we're in the space with our child, it's a good indication of what's going on for them. So, and when we bring breath to that, when we can sink into that rather than react to it, we're actually immediately, before we even open our mouth, helping that child to better regulate their own system.
What does that mean, to bring breath to it or to sink into it?
So it's essentially a way to bring presence to the feeling. So we tend to want to run away from uncomfortable feelings and get to the next more pleasant feeling, but that doesn't actually help us learn how to be with and manage them better. So when we bring a breath to it, we're bringing an ability to be mindful in a moment with that feeling and with that experience, so that we teach ourselves that we know how to get out of balance and get back in balance, and get out of balance and get back in balance.
And being out of balance, therefore, is less scary because you're building your tolerance.
Yeah, so it's essentially widening the window of tolerance to be with a fuller range of feeling. And that's, those feelings are coming about as a result of, essentially our brain deciding that something is a threat. And children live in that world, like their brain, the nature of where their brain development is at is that they're constantly scanning their environments for threats, and they don't have the developed neural pathways into their more higher centers of the brain to be able to quickly realize that that's not actually a reason to really be scared, that they can stay in those threat states for longer, particularly if they're not heard and helped to move out of them again.
Okay. When you talk about going to swimming, are you allowing those feeling states to be in you both? Can you get down on her level and give lots of presence and regulate your own nervous system to deal with your triggers at the same time as you're witnessing her meltdown?
So I listen to that and I think, gosh, sometimes that is an absolutely Herculean,
impossibility.
Yeah, right. Because when you're triggered, it's really hard to be present with your child without wanting to change their reaction or make it go away or fix it, or to be present with it means we have to be present with that feeling in ourselves, and that can be really hard. But when we are able to get down on their level, when we're able to feel into our body and even like move gently from like one foot to the other, like just
you're big on rocking and swaying.
Yeah, I do it often, even like halfway through when we're podcasting, I do it. And we can actually one of the really powerful ways is to kind of almost give yourself sort of like a hug, but you like clamp down on each of your arms, like so you start from your shoulder and just like give your
almost like horsey squeeze,
kind of, and intentionally do that down each of your own arms, because it's a really cathartic kind of way to move, feeling, and get in your body. So they're the kind of practices that I would talk about in terms of like regulating your own nervous system. And then you're able to, and as you come back into more of a centered state, you're actually helping your child too, because they're learning from you, they're mirroring you. What was next?
I have lost my spot. Let me catch up.
Oh, yes, here. So she's looking to you as you are her external regulator,
to figure out the template of how to experience every feeling state. So this is a really beautiful concept that I love when you really expand and talk about being that you are the regulator. And it can be really hard because it's kind of the next step beyond mirror, really, isn't it? It's just another evolution of mirror, of really thinking about this. So do you want to just... I even loved the analogy you'd said to me, it's like, when you're terrified, like you're about to bungee jump or something, and you cling on to the person in a way, energetically or otherwise, who's more courageous, who's showing less fear. And you almost try and cling on to them, and your nervous system clings onto them to try and regulate or match that. And that's what kids are doing. And I thought that's a genius way of explaining it.
Because you're borrowing, like whether you're conscious of it or not, you're borrowing like the nervous system of the person who seems more together in that moment. And so, our children spend if they're spending most of their time with us, they rely on us to become, their external regulator, which is requiring us, therefore, to be willing to feel what's happening in our own body without wanting to avoid or become consumed by that experience. And, but this is the thing, like that is so damn hard sometimes. And so it's not about being perfect either, but just recognizing that because we're generally going to be a little bit more regulated than our child simply because of, years and the amounts of experiences that we've been able to integrate, we're generally going to be more regulated. So they will borrow that. And that's what they will use.
And I have to tell you, this has even helped me in moments of being triggered and when I'm like, and thinking, you have an opportunity here. Set the tone. Like it's another form of self-talk that I find myself doing. Yeah. Set the tone. Be the anchor. Like we talk about being the anchor in the storm. But unless you're able to anchor yourself, you are no anchor.
No.
You're not anchoring anything. No. So I find this a really useful analogy, just to be literally pull that anchor down into that sand and set that vibrational tone and let them wail and come into you,
Yeah. I was thinking a lot about that anchor. How much can you anchor? And again, like we can't in every moment, and nor should we, but it's about recognizing that this is the role we're being given, whether we like it or not.
And it's an opportunity every time. It's an opportunity. And can you stretch it a second longer than what you did yesterday?
Absolutely. And I think that, our children aren't expecting us to be
perfect, whatever that is.
Exactly. But it's the little bits that stack up that where we're able to show, this is what you do when you're angry. It's like tonight, like Sylvie is into throwing stuff off the bench, which is really not fun. And she threw off the bench a really beautiful ceramic cup that my mum got her for her birthday. I think it was for her first birthday. She got it for her. And I was really upset about it. And I didn't yell at her, but I was like, Sylvie, I'm feeling really angry because I didn't want you to do that. And I'd asked you not to, which, I mean, come on, what 2-year-old is going to respond when you ask them not to, really?
I don't know. I mean, you and I hash this out all the time. We go backwards and forwards on this.
But it was almost like because she was reacting to my because I could see her like swishing it around the bench and I'm like, don't drop it. And she's like, whoop. Straight off. And so then, I was, talking to her about how I was feeling and I was sweeping it up and putting it away. And he goes like, Mum, let's set up these cushions and you can punch out your anger. So I was like, he does see, he does listen. And I was like, yes, thank you. I need to, because even though it's not her fault, I'm still feeling really angry and I need to move this anger. Because I was feeling really frustrated about it and frustrated myself because I'd seen her do this stuff before and I was not giving her the plastic cup because I was like, oh no, she'll be right. And she wasn't right with it. But I digress. That's not the point. The point was that, even though there's heaps of times where I lose my shit, there's enough times where he has seen, when we get angry, we can do things like set up the pillows to punch, or we can have a wrestle. Like he has a.
It's what you do the majority of the time that sticks. It's not the occasional stuff. It's the old 70-30, 80-20,
Yeah.
I totally believe that. And you're a big believer in the less words, the better. That a child's regulation will happen through their body. So move with them rather than speak with them.
Yes.
Can you expand that a bit?
So I'd probably say that for myself as much as anything because I would naturally go to words and usually when I'm angry, words that are quite terse and needing to make a point. But actually what I'm really needing to do in those moments because that's the left brain, who wants to very adult-like kind of sort this shit out. But actually the child is in the right brain largely. They are in that movement. They are in that, they're sensing beings. And so what is better for me to do is to breathe, to find my way back into my body, and then think about a couple of words to say, but actually it's about me instead checking in with my body and going, I'm feeling really frustrated right now. I wonder if you're feeling frustrated because I'm telling you that I want you to go to swimming and you don't want to go. I'm really hearing that you don't want to go to swimming and you don't like it that I'm asking you to go. That is what I would be doing, would be taking the moment to be in my body and feel the feelings that I've got coming up that I'm thinking is what's going on in the child, and then giving them the voice to those feelings that they've got going on, because often even just doing that, often exactly, naming it, shaming it, often just doing that is giving them the language that they're not able to get for what's going on. But we start first in the body, not about the step after that, which might be, I hear that, but we actually need to go because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah, I do. So when you're saying move with your child, you're saying emotionally more move with your child or follow their paraphrasing versus physically moving. Is that what you mean?
I think you could even, sometimes you could even, if it was big feelings, you could even just gently sway from side to side or rub your legs to talk about how big the feelings are in the body. Because often the bigger the feelings are, I mean, you see it with boys. I notice with my son, he is jumping around the room sometimes when he's trying to regulate. And this is the thing, we don't need to give them the tools to regulate. They're doing it. They know how to do it. But often we need to unlearn whatever shit that we've internalized about how children should behave, because that's bullshit. This idea that children should be sitting still or should be confining themselves to a way that adults think that they should behave in a moment is actually disconnecting them from their natural regulatory capacity, because they are always able to access that if we let them. And I mean, I've been paying a lot of attention to this lately because my son doesn't like to sit at dinner table often. And when I'm asking him to come back, he's often moving from cushion to cushion or jumping around. And I'll want to like make that bad or wrong. But I actually know that that's innately wise for him to be doing that, because that he is bringing his system back into a level of presence that he is unable to get to if I'm asking him to sit still and stay still, because that's not a natural thing for a child, particularly I think a boy who is naturally even more so needing to move. I think when we can pay attention to what our children's natural way to regulate is, we can see a lot of wisdom that we can't even begin to impart because they've got it. And like we've all got it, but depending on whatever we were cultured with, we've made it quieter and quieter and quieter and quieter.
So my question here is, what do you perceive as the line between movement for regulation and movement for distraction?
Well, I think you got to look at what is a distraction because of what? Like, what are you labeling it distraction because they don't want to face something, or because they don't want to have a conversation, or
as a way of avoidance, so they can't be still?
I don't even think that they have the cognitive capacity, particularly under 6 or 8, to have any way of discerning, like needing to be still because we want them to be still for something. Like I don't know that is realistic, because naturally when they're regulated, when they're present with a task that is deeply meaningful for them, they'll find stillness. But they're not going to find stillness if it's something that we want for them when we're projecting onto them that they should be still, like at dinner. You know what I mean? Like if he's not hungry, not interested in the food at the moment because his value is playing Lego, or his value is like building a fort, or his value is something that's not being there on the table in that moment, and I'm asking him to come into stillness, that's my projection onto him of how he should be, which is not actually where he wants to be in that moment in his body. And so his body will be doing what it needs to get him to deal with potentially the fight or flight feelings that are coming up as a result of me getting angry because I want him to do something that's in my values and not in his. So I've just been paying attention to that, because I know I've got like emotional charges around dinner table and how kids should be at the dinner table. So he is plugging into that and playing that out for me at the same time as I'm looking at, or how is he dealing with this? And how am I dealing with myself when he's doing that? Like it's that dance. And I guess the more I look at children and how they naturally need to move, how much of our cultural expectations on them therefore are going to make them need to move even more in order to deal with that, like to deal with what we're asking that is yes, okay, might be a value of ours, but still needs to be ultimately a negotiation so that everybody's values get met, not that I say that this has to happen,
No, I really get what you're saying. I really do. I'm really wanting to kind of, stretch into this a bit. I still get a little bit sticky on that point, because I know particularly with my son that movement is an excellent way to avoid icky feelings. So when I'm asking him to do something he doesn't want to do, sure, I could say it's my value, not his, or I could say he's found the exact way that he doesn't ever have to get into stillness in order to be quiet within himself, in order to face those yucky feelings that are probably stored up from somewhere else in his day. But when I anchor him, can you make eye contact with me? I want you to stay still with me right now. I want you to be in your body. Come into your body right now. And what are you feeling? He's going to be itchy and angry and jiggly, and he'll probably at some point crack into tears. And I see that as cathartic, because I'm providing the wall in which there's a boundary for him to get in touch with the feelings that he's moved past for all of his day, and would keep jumping on the couch, jumping on the pillows, creating forts, running around the house, playing with his friends. In order to not ever have to be still. And so I get stuck there, because I'm like, I totally get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying in terms of to support the values that they're on path for their genius, and recognize when I'm asking them to step outside of their personal values in order to fit and conform into mine, and there's pain involved in that. I like really get it on a head level. And then I think about the interaction of that in my world. And I can see how, okay, so maybe I have a really strong value on relationships or family or emotional connectivity that maybe my child doesn't have. But then I go, yeah, okay. But if I just left them to be, they wouldn't learn that either. You know?
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And I still have not got a hard and fast answer for it because I'm still figuring it out. Like, and there's times, you know, where I'm like, oh, like I still feel challenged by that movement, but I haven't found the way always to get him to come into presence. You know, and sometimes finding the movement and then having the conversation, I'll then get the presence after that, but it will be less from the I need you to look at me kind of conversation to us sitting next to each other on the couch and him kind of splayed out next to me laying down going, oh, I'm worried about that and I don't like that. And that happened tonight. Like this whole cascade of things that had clearly been on his mind all day were just verbally coming out like diarrhea. You know, so I guess, yes, maybe it does bypass some of those feelings, and maybe that's probably an expression of, well, I don't have a stronger value on needing those to come out in that way. But I think that there's value also in what you do in terms of holding that and asking for that. But I do think that asking someone for eye contact, depending on where they're at, can also be deeply challenging. And for some children, if it's difficult for them, almost intrusive, like if it's really hard for them to do that, because even if you think about adults, if you're asking an adult for that and that's not safe, it's the same thing. You know, it's hard to ask that of yourself when that is a deeply painful thing to confront. And then who are we to force that on to another?
Because I'm all about the
person.
pain, Bridget.
Yeah.
Fucking rip that Band-Aid off.
I know, right? But when we're talking about
why can't you give me eye contact? Don't feel secure enough in yourself right now? We can move into that.
Oh God, the woman that he marries. Oh geez.
No, I really love that we're able to have these conversations because I actually really love being challenged in the way that I see the world. I actually really love that.
Me too. Still hard.
So, yeah, I really appreciate, which I'm sure many of our listeners do, this concept of really being able to have a heart and mind conversation about something that you're deeply passionate about, like parenting. Because I often don't feel on an even keel with, you know, my husband or whoever that I'm having this conversation with that's multi-layered.
Yes.
So I actually totally love being able to, you know, stretch my and stretch my perceptions and think about how that plays out in my world, and you know, and try. I think I'm a big fan of also trying stuff on occasionally.
Totally,
you know, try a little left, try a little right, try that skivvy on. Not sure, okay, you know. I think that there's a bit of that in working out who your authentic mother is.
Yes.
You know,
yeah, and you know, I really love that our children are always trying to get us there too. You know, that's what they want most from us. And I often wonder if taking us to our edges of anger is also deeply serving that, because there's often nowhere where you're more authentic is when you're laying down boundaries, you know, for yourself or for someone else that you love in your family. And how that actually really serves our children to go, oh, that's what I was looking for. Now I can see you. Thanks for that, Mum. You know, because we can, especially if you've got a high value on it and you're always going, oh, is that the right way? Or didn't like how I did that. Or you're really trying to create this ideal of how you want a mother. All that shit burns to pieces when you're super like present and authentic and angry, or you know, or whatever it is, but often anger is one of the most profound ones that gets us authentic pretty damn quickly. And
we know when people are intimate with us and really present or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, we've digressed. Let's come back. And then when she's receptive afterwards, you can talk about the swimming lessons themselves. Ultimately, though, it's a projection of your values onto her, which is actually great. This is an excellent segue from our last conversation. She is designed to resist what she doesn't want to do. When she's present, you can look at a problem-solving or look at problem solving. Is there anything you think we could do together to make the lessons more fun? Would you like it if we got there earlier and had a swim together before your class, etc., etc.? So you're trying to meld the values?
Yeah. And I mean, I think about this in the relation to this idea of what we talk about in terms of where children's brain development's at. So if we think about their limbic system, so they start off, the reptilian brain is fully wired at birth, and then the centers of the brain slowly go up. So, by 3, their limbic's on, and that's the perception of threats. So children live in this world of perceiving threats, and those threats can be physical safety, so this perception of them being harmed. It can be the threat of the unknown, so like what I don't know. So that's why we talk about things like rhythm and routine kids actually thrive on, because the threat of the unknown can be a real source of fear for children. Incongruence in the environment's another one of the big 4 fears of the brain. So it's this, you're saying one thing, but I'm feeling another, or I can sense that you're saying that we're going to do this, but actually I know that you're going to do something else. Any sense of incongruence where it doesn't make sense, children can have a fear of. And the shoulds and unmet expectations. So you should do this, or I was expecting something and I didn't get that. So that's another one of the big threats. So if you think about us asking our children to go swimming, you're pretty much ticking every one of those 4 threats, essentially. So if they're feeling like they could drown or they don't feel safe in water, tick, their physical safety is feeling under threat. If there's a fear of the unknown, so they don't know who the teacher is going to be that day, they don't know if they're going to feel comfortable in their bathers, they don't know how long the class is going to go for, they don't know if you're going to be paying attention. Like any one of those things, that's tick, fear of the unknown. Incongruence in the environment, maybe they don't trust the teacher, maybe they feel like the teacher is pushing them into something that they don't feel safe with, tick. And then shoulds and unmet expectations, I feel like my mum is telling me I should do this, but I don't want it, tick. So you can see why swimming lessons can be deeply triggering for children. So what we can do, if it's still really important to us, is to bring more empowerment into it for the child. So that is looking at ways to play through it. So whatever kind of attachment play you could look at for swimming, but also giving them as much choice as possible. So this idea of, how could we make them more fun? Like maybe they could have some special bathers that they just wear for those lessons, that are only for their lessons, that they get to pick, that's just their choice, or they have a special floaty or whatever it can be where they feel a sense of empowerment in it. It could be, maybe a sibling gets looked after and it's just, you and them time, and before or after it you have a play in the pool, or after it you go for a Chini together, like a baby Chini together, or there's something of a ritual around it that helps them feel held in that environment. Whatever it is that you can bring a sense of safety that can meet those, as much as possible, those 4 threats, are ways in which you're going to find more willingness in your child to do it. But ultimately, if they really don't want to do it, we have to ask ourselves, is our intense desire for this to be what they need to do worth it enough to potentially create trauma, for the child? Because some kids have massive fears around water, and we want to make that water safe for them, but I don't think it needs to be at the point at which it's forcing them to do something that they don't want to do. So I think it's a real conscious questioning around how you can meet all of those challenges that they're perceiving, and then really questioning where your own fears are. So if they were to stop swimming lessons, what would your fear be? Because usually what we're desiring most is as a result of some kind of fear that we have. And so how can we also address that?
I was about to say that actually, because I also think often, particularly if our identity is wrapped up in our motherhood, our success or failure at that can feel like it's life-threatening to us.
Yeah.
And it's easy to make it about, well, we live in an island and we live near the beach, or I have a pool in the backyard, so, it's really important that they learn to swim. Okay. And what's the fear below that? So if in the swimming lessons, Sally's the child in the class that's screaming and kicking and refusing to get in, what are you feeling?
Yeah.
What is the belief and the thought that's running through your head? How do you think other people are perceiving you? What are they thinking about you? because I bet you there's a pain point there.
Totally. Yeah. And so, you feeling angry, you feeling resentful to your child, you feeling like they should be this, that, or the other. And all of those things, like your kids picking up on that too before you've said anything.
Is it success or failure at this? How are you perceived within your family or within your friendship circle? Or is there, are you the outcast? Because that's certainly going to be shattering to your core if you're feeling like you're an outcast versus belonging, which is so important to us humans.
Yes.
And there's the perceptions and the ridicule perhaps you face within, the teacher herself. I can actually tell you this, I've had on and off issues with my third child with swimming lessons. And she was 3 and it was not going very well at all. So we stopped for a while. We tried again. No good. Stopped again. And then we've started this year. So she's 4. And this year she's been much more confident and really happy. And then in the place that we go to, as they move up in levels, they change teachers. So that's been destabilizing to her, as opposed to my other kids are in a smaller swim school. And so they had the continuous kind of teacher. And so we're kind of facing new layers. Anyway, we've kind of moved through, lots of tears and tantrums, and it's my leg hurts and I don't want to. And, I've got a headache, and she's trying to pull all the tricks in the book beforehand that she knows I'd normally respond to because, physical health is a top value of mine.
Yeah.
Fairly sure a 4-year-old has worked that out.
Yes.
So the way to get Mum on side is to be
appeal
injured.
to that. Yeah.
But, I do now recognize that, because I was a bit like, oh, is it? I don't know, Now I realize it was this genius way of bringing my empathy, connection and sympathy, and sometimes a genius way of her not having to face the thing that she was really scared of. And I'm a really big believer in, feel the fear, resource yourself, and then smash that shit out and realize you're bigger than your fears. That thing that you're scary of, what's the worst case scenario and how can we brace around that and then do it. Be in this world. Don't hold back because you're too scared and never know what you're made of and what's possible. Like how, anyway. So we were getting swimming lessons really early so that we could have a swim and a play in the pool beforehand. And that was going really well. And then I would drop her off with her teacher and I would say goodbye and I would leave her with confidence. The feeling in my body, if we're talking about setting a tone,
beautiful,
was confidence. I know that you are safe. I know that you will be fine. And right now what you need from me is to feel the belief that I have that you will be fine.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and I could feel that edge, when you're saying that precipice, if I could melt into this and, could all go horribly wrong, or I could go, you're good, mate. And so I took a breath and I smiled and I said, you are going to be great. And I walked away and she was great. And then recently we went backwards again because they started doing a new style, backwards, backstroke and whatever on a kick in. She started to freak out about going under the water. And so we were having lessons again with loads of tears and tantrums. And as is so perfect in the dynamics we experience in these worlds, she has manifested this teacher who was so acutely attuned to Lola's tears and inability, so to speak, that I was parenting the teacher. But it took me a while to realize that's what was going on.
How hilarious.
It took me 3 weeks to realize this is what was happening. And the last one was she said something really silly, like I think most of the kids in class, because it's still a fairly low level of swimming, maybe like between 3 and 4, and Lola's 4 turning 5. So she's a year older than most of the kids in the class. But I really don't care. It's not an issue for me. And so she even said, do you think maybe Lola would even be feeling a bit like, the kids are littler than me and blah, blah. And I'm like, no. Pretty sure that's an adult perception on a situation, not her experience at all. And then I walked away and I was really fucking angry about it. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And so I walked back the next week ready to talk to her, and miraculously she wasn't there. And I got the supervisor. And the supervisor came and she goes, oh, so-and-so, was really worried and wanted me to check in with you and blah, blah, blah. I said, good. I'm really glad you're checking in with me because I'm really confused about what's going on here. Because the problems that she's having is with Lola expressing the fact that she's scared And I would rather Lola said to her teacher, I'm scared, and that she let those tears flow out than stuff them down and pretend that she wasn't. And the supervisor was going, yeah, sure. And I said, and I wonder if the teacher is looking at me, looking at her with my child who's sobbing and thinking that I think she's doing something wrong because I don't. I think she's an excellent teacher. I'm really happy with how she's handling Lola and what she's doing and how she's moving her through that and how responsive she is. I don't think a bad word about that teacher at all. I'm really happy with how it's going. And I'm on no timeline here. Whatever unfolds is what unfolds in Lola's time. It's not an issue for me and it's not an issue for her. We rocked back the next week and I've spent the week talking to Lola about, you know, when you go, what are you really scared about? And she's like, well, you know, being on my back. And I'm like, yeah, but what are you scared about being on your back? That I'll go under the water, because she hadn't put her head under the water really. She freaks out about it. Wouldn't even wear goggles, like claustrophobic.
Yeah, that's what Hugo's like as well.
And so I was saying to her, okay, so what's your worst case scenario? If you go under the water, what's going to happen? I can't breathe. Okay. What if we can work out a way where you learn how to breathe and you feel safe under the water? And so in this week in between, we were in the pool and I was bringing a magic story to life. You know, when I was little and I would put my head under the water, I would feel like I was in another world. And if you try and you put your head under, it sounds completely different. The whole world that you're in right now, put your head up, normal world. Put your head down, you're in a completely different world. And it looks different and the colours are different and it sounds different. Do you want to try with me? You know, and so we were doing this. And to the point where then she was putting her head under because she wanted to hear the sounds under the water.
That's so awesome. I love it.
So the next week we get there and the teacher's beaming at me as I'm walking towards her. And I think, oh, okay, the supervisor's talked to her. And so I came over and I said to her, you know, I wanted you to know that I have the utmost confidence in you as a teacher. I don't have an issue with what you're doing. And I'm okay with Lola having a cry and telling you how she's feeling and that she does that with you. I don't feel the need to come and rescue her and I'm really happy with what you're doing. And she went, oh, good. Thank you. And no tears. Everyone's been perfect since.
It's amazing how you almost have to kind of go through that to get to the side.
Isn't it? But I was thinking how perfect, because Lola is literally mirroring in ways I wouldn't even know this teacher's story because she's so hypersensitive to Lola's experience that it become an issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, Lola's probably healing their own teacher's story.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like blowing my mind how perfect these dynamics are. And then in the process, I'm not sure, does this teacher, I mean, she'd be my mum's age, but does she have a mother wound? Because here I am saying, I see you and I think you're perfect. You know, like how perfect is all of this?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Isn't it?
God.
So I just think there's often more going on than we think there is.
And then we can even perceive.
Yeah. So I know we're running out of time, but did you want to talk about your struggles with swimming at all? And because you were really big on the mirror that you were being taken back to with Hugo.
Yeah, so he somehow got school sores from the pool, so he hasn't been back. So he was like,
my kids have gotten so many. That's why we're at the pool right now, because yes, my kids have gotten sick from the pool so many times.
So I think that's where it came from, and then we got sick, and then I got sick, so that was awesome. But so we had to basically put his lessons on hold all last term, and actually I just used it as a credit for Sylvie's lessons. So she's back in the pool, and she loves it, and so I'm just going to continue and continue to ride that with her. But Hugo is really great in the pool free swimming now and is quite happy to swim, but doesn't love lessons and doesn't like it when they want him to put his head under. So he doesn't love the idea of going back next term, but we will go back. And we're already having conversations about that. And for him, it's really about him being empowered in choice around some of those edges and finding ways to move into putting his head under in a way that doesn't him feel like he's being forced. So they're really good about working with that. So trying different, again, to make it interesting, to give him a sense of safety, all of that stuff, because it's the whole worrying about his, eyes hurting is his thing under the water. I don't think he has a worry about not being able to breathe. It's more his eyes hurting.
And the goggles isn't the solution to that?
He doesn't, they don't like them to wear goggles. They like them to have learned how to comfortably go underwater without the goggles, because otherwise they rely on the goggles. It becomes the crutch.
Bullshit.
So we do a lot of
I'd be smacking goggles on that kid.
Yeah. I don't know, but I get the point though too.
Oh, come on. The more that they get comfortable and safe, the more they expand those boundaries and get courageous, and they're splashing and they're jumping in when they don't have it. And nah. We're
doing a lot of stuff in the bath at the moment anyway. So we're doing lots of see how far you can go under in the bath, and getting him comfortable with water.
It does hurt though. My eyes have bloody hurt from having my eyes open.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I've got contact lenses, so I don't even open my eyes in the water anymore. So they get super sore. But, I don't know. I think he's still got to get used to it. Got to get used to at least the basics of having his head wet, his eyes wet, his face wet.
But if goggles are the bridge to that, who the fuck cares?
All right, we'll have goggles as a backup then.
I just think that's one of the things you don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
If that's going to get him in a safe enough zone that he's willing to focus on the work, not on the not managing the anxiety, then I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
And let's even say your worst case scenario happened and then they rely on their goggles for swimming. So what does that mean? When he doesn't have goggles and he goes swimming, that he keeps his head above the water?
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Who cares? That won't happen though, by the way.
Yeah, fair call.
Or, I've had friends who have completely rebutted the whole, chlorine swimming pool thing, and they do the Vic Swim program in summer at the beach every year.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, they do an intensive. You can do intensives for anywhere between 1 and 3 weeks, and they all swear by the fact that their kids have learnt to swim. And I've heard many parents say that actually, that intensive swimming sessions, in school holidays, so 1 week a term, is just as effective as weekly lessons.
Well, Hugo's actually got a swimming intensive with school, like a week swimming intensive at the end of the year. So I
don't know. I mean, there's other ways. There's other
they can
concepts too. Yeah. I mean, even if he prefers the more freestyle thing, I mean, Vic Swim is pretty cool too on the beach. Nippers,
hot tip. Yeah, I want to do nippers anyway. I kind of want to get him swimming for nippers, so he has a more better experience there. But yeah. Anyway.
We've digressed.
We've totally digressed. As we do.
We hope you've gotten something out of this.
Yes, we do.
We'd love to remind you, Align Parenting is coming up in September. So if you're really ready to expand your parenting toolkit, then please check it out at nourishingthemother.com.au/online programs. And thank you so much for listening to our stories and for sharing your stories with us via socials or email. We really do enjoy reading them. And you can find us on Nourishing the Mother on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest now.
And to connect with you, Jules?
Yes. Oh, yes. I don't think we did that last week.
We didn't do it last week.
ThePleasureNutritionist.com in Newbridge.
SuburbanSandcastles.com. And don't forget to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.